Tonight on the Revolution Against Evolution, we're going to deal with a subject I think that the creation model really shines.
Yep.
And this is my co-host Rich Gear, by the way, and I'm Doug Sharp, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Ice Age. And the Ice Age is an area where I think a lot of people don't realize that the creation model really has actually a leg up upon the evolution model, because it really has some explanations that I think that the evolution model doesn't have in terms of how we can explain some of the things that we observe in the Arctic area and in the landforms that are created as a result of glaciation.
The thing is, Doug, is that one thing, yes, is the uniformitarian model, or the mechanistic model, if you will. Of course, they don't just have one ice age. I think, what is it, 4 now? There may be more, there may be less. I think Jim, I think it's 4.
Traditionally, it was four ice ages that they talked about.
And it's like, you know, they need these 4 different ice ages with periods of warming up, interglacial periods in between. But they never really explain how this happens that I ever saw. They just, and there may be explanations. I assume that there are probably ones that they come up with, but why it comes forth back. And this is when we were talking about this earlier. This is a really good the creationist model. Really, there is a reason why an ice age would have come on this Earth at a certain time. You're going to talk a little bit how glaciation works a little bit. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, I'm going to. First of all, start off by telling you a little bit about the flood model itself.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Because what we really believe is that the biblical account of Noah's flood explains a lot of what we see in geology. And like, for example, behind us here in this photograph that we have behind us, this mountain right behind me is Chief Mountain, which is found in Glacier National Park. Now, Glacier National Park is a tremendous model which shows the real fallacy of the supposed geological column that showed different periods of time, starting from Precambrian, which is supposed to be the very earliest
bedrock
time
of the world, yeah.
And then it goes on up through Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, and all those other periods of time. You get to up here near the top is Cretaceous, then some of the more recent types of
let's see,
things.
Remember how they all go Miocene, you get Pleistocene, Oligocene. I mean, there's all these things they got, and then the catch-all in the one we have now. Well, you had Eocene, but now we're living in recent.
Okay, well, whatever.
So we're up to recent now.
But anyway, let's take a look at that mountain that's right behind me there. This is Chief Mountain. Chief Mountain is Precambrian rock, which is supposed to be the very lowest bedrock type of strata that you can find.
That's where this.
That is sitting on top of the Cretaceous strata, which is supposedly the age of the dinosaurs, which is relatively recent in terms of
geologic time, right?
Yeah. To see the oldest strata on top of this very young strata really doesn't work in terms of trying to explain how it got that way.
Well, let's put it this way. The Precambrian rock is 4.6 billion to what? Is it 2.8? I'm trying to remember how far Precambrian goes back.
It goes back a billion years or something like that.
Anyway, and then the Cretaceous is about, well, it ends in 65 million years ago, and it starts at about, what is it, 80?
125.
Is it 125 million years? Right, it's been a while since I went over all those things, but it's like, yeah. But the point is, that's a lot, the problem is they get away with it, Doug. We talked about this because when you have old times, old after a certain point, it's just old.
Right.
And what you're doing is losing the reality of how far these layers are supposedly separated, and that they aren't separated, And so that's a big, big problem. And there's also the way the layers are over each other, too. You don't have all that grinding actions and stuff,
Yeah, if you take a look at the layer of rock between these two strata, which is, you can actually see a line right across area of Chief Mountain where this actually occurs. That line is like a knife edge, and the integrity of the rock structure between the two layers is as if it was just laid down by water that way, instead of what you really have to postulate is that rock uplift would have had to taken place that was almost 3 miles high to lift the bottom portion of that rock way up in the air and almost 3 miles worth of strata lifted up like that, and then shoved over 50 miles.
They'd had to do it without causing any grinding action on the bottom, or chewing up, or basically it really had to be done on a hydroplane of some sort. I mean, the point is there's no mechanism that explains this. Well, Doug, let's get back to the glacial part, because that's what we're talking about here.
So, this is one of the reasons why we question the geological column. That's
right, which is a good point, yeah.
And we also believe that, taking the biblical account is that the day of creation was somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago, depending on which creationist you want to talk to.
Yeah, but no matter how you talk to them, you're not going to get over 10,000 years. It just isn't happening. The billions and millions of years is pretty unusual. You just don't get it.
And creationists believe that the flood can explain all of the stratification that you see in the earth as part of this massive geologic change that took place in the earth.
And we have empirical evidence for that. I mean, we have some recent phenomena we've talked about on our shows before, but things like Mount St. Helens and even the one canyon that was cut out in the
Salton Sea.
Salton Sea, yeah. And some things of the phenomena of that thing. And those are just basically local floods.
Right.
Let alone a worldwide one that we're talking about. So, but anyway, I guess, Doug, the thing is, we talked about at the very beginning, we kind of teased him a little bit, saying that the Ice Age is really a place where the creationist model can really shine.
And we're really talking post-flood here, Rich.
Yeah, and that's the thing I think they need to know.
We have to understand that global flood would have caused massive geological and weather changes in the entire earth. And we believe that when God created the earth, he created it with a protective layer of either a water vapor or of a number of different things, which would have created it with a tropical, even temperature type of environment. And there's been a lot of speculation on that, whether that is really necessary or not.
The point is, we know the world before the flood was semi-tropical or subtropical. I mean, it was warm. We do know that. We also know, Doug, or the thing is, what I was interested in, Doug, was what would have happened with a worldwide flood. You talk about all the layers of rock being formed, right? Mm-hmm. But how much vegetation would have been on the surface of the world right after the flood when the waters were drained off? Mm-hmm. What would have happened then? What's going on now?
The continents that would have been left after the flood would have been pretty much barren of vegetation. And so they would have not been able to hold the heat like our current continents do today.
Right, the vegetation and other factors allow the foliage and things of that nature allow the earth to absorb the heat from the sun, correct? And it stays on there a lot more. Well, we have a situation then post-flood, right, Doug? Right. Where we were talking about this, and it's like you have a situation where now the earth is not able to hold the heat in the normal way that it did before the flood. But the oceans, yeah.
The oceans after the flood would have been a lot warmer because there would have been a lot of volcanic activity that was taking place during the flood. In fact, a lot of people have suggested that the mid-Atlantic ridge was actually a separation point during the flood where the continents actually moved apart. And of course, that would have been accompanied by the breaking up of the fountains of the deep, as described in the Bible. Right. And a lot of the subterranean water would have welled up as geysers, hot steam geysers. And so, what they also believe is that because of the warm oceans, it may be 80 degrees or more. Even the Arctic Ocean and that area would have been warm areas. Covered, the ice cover that's there now would not have been there because of the warm oceans. And there is a lot of interesting things that have been found in the Arctic areas that we're going to talk about tonight, which talk about a time where those areas in the surrounding that Arctic Ocean would have been almost a temperate or even a tropical type of environment.
Now this is interesting, Doug, because I wanted to ask you about this because we have a post-flood situation where we're talking about an ice age being set in because you've got the land masses are cold because they're not able to retain heat. You've got the oceans are warm, What would this have caused? Would this have caused a lot of the ice? Would this cause precipitation? And when it got over the land, would it have been cold?
It would have created a dynamic weather engine that would have, it had the warm moisture rising up and then piling it up as snow onto the continents.
Now, would this have happened very quickly, or would this have taken thousands of years, hundreds of years, a few decades? Or, I mean, I guess what I'm confused
Dr. Eric von Fange talks about an ice age of relatively short in comparison to what the evolutionists would have you say, about 400 years worth of ice age before the equilibrium set in when the oceans in the north got a lot colder.
I see, okay. Now, so during this time, then what you're saying is that there was a period of time, even though the land was cold, how do we get a subtropical, because the oceans were warm, and it, probably on the coastal regions where it stayed subtropical, but the inland was kind of cold. Would have been colder, because that's the only thing that makes any sense, because you've got these stories of these mammoths being buried in ice and all this stuff, and you always heard these as far as like this is the ice age, and there. I mean, how many are we talking about? Thousands of mammoths, hundreds of thousands being buried in ice, or are they bones, or are they actually? We hear about these fresh ones. I guess they're the most spectacular, right?
Right.
You know,
fresh bones of dinosaurs and of mammoths and things like that that have been found up.
Oh, we've got fresh bones of dinosaurs up there now, huh?
Yeah, I guess that was something that was just recently discovered, and it was on the news, and then you don't hear about it anymore because somebody put out that little light.
Why do you think you would never hear about a fresh bone? If you listen to the show before, you'll know what the implications of a fresh dinosaur bone is. If these guys were around 65 million years ago, there's no way you could have a fresh bone. There's no way you could have a bone, period. It has to be fossilized, turned into a rock, right? Bones, I mean, let's face it, a few thousand years, especially in climates like this, very moist and wet, would have been disintegrated. I mean, they would have rotted away. But now what we have, not only do we not have fossil bones of dinosaurs, we have fresh bones.
Right.
That really messes them over, because that means they lived in recent times. Because bones will not last that long. Bones are the longest thing that lasts on our bodies or last in living tissue, bones, but still, a few thousand years and they're gone. They're dust. They're decayed.
Well, it doesn't even take that long.
Now you realize I'm giving them a benefit of the doubt. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give them as much as I can give them, Doug, and I still can't get 65 million years. But see, again, people get
65 years.
What's that, 65 they're gone?
Yeah.
But you know, you've got bones from mummies and things, but what I'm getting at is no matter how we stretch it, see, what I'm trying to get is people not to get deceived by just thinking a few thousand and 65 million years are equivalent terms. It is so far different, and the purpose of having it so far different, well, that's another issue. But the idea that it just doesn't connect. No matter how much time I'm going to gratuitously give these guys for these bones, you're not going to get 65 million years. You just can't get it. You can't get there from here. The old adage goes. Well, anyway, Doug, let's go back to the Ice Age. So we got dinosaur, we got mammoths. We have bones. We also have fresh things. Now this, for a long time, I was confused on this, Doug, because I want to ask you a question. As I always thought, would have been sort of either at the flood. I thought, well, maybe things got turned real cold, but no, that couldn't have been happening. I thought, well, maybe right after the flood, when God, the wind was coming on and the land was cold. But then I wondered, how did these animals get frozen in here? How did these hundreds of thousands of mammoths get frozen into the point where you have fresh tissue? Or do we have that many freshwater, or are they mainly bones?
Well, ever since 1611, according to this account here, the people up in Siberia have been mining ivory from these thousands of mammoths that have been buried in the ice. Now, if you figure out something about bone itself, if you have it so it isn't preserved, if it's sort of like fossilized or whatever, it doesn't retain its integrity to be good as for ivory.
Right, okay.
It just sort of disintegrates and isn't worth for much. But here it must have been frozen quickly in order for it to be preserved this way.
Well, this is what I want to get to, Doug, because the only cataclysm we really hear about of a worldwide or a huge stature like this is the worldwide flood. Are you saying there were cataclysms post-flood? Well, we do hear about something about when the day the earth was divided, and we could take that as to be physical,
Right.
or maybe it was languages, I don't know. But the point is, Eric von Fange talks, he and some other people talk about, was there a period of time where it was fairly benign, and then was there a lot of cataclysms that happened post-flood? And it seems to me that could be true based on the fact that the world getting back to its
Right.
In other words, if you got some major thing where waters are coming over the land, fountains of the deep breaking up, volcanism, whether it was caused by an axis shift or a meteorite hitting or however God, whatever physical engine or God just, are you saying that there were a lot of cataclysms, post-flood cataclysms that would account for this rapid burial of these mammoths? Is that what we're saying or not?
Certainly, but not, of course, on the scale of Noah's flood itself. But
Right.
obviously, the Earth would have had to shift in its weather patterns a whole bunch, because it would be cooling off from after the flood time.
Well, that's what I was kind of getting.
Right.
But we're talking about some major. Doug, to freeze these mammoths the way they're frozen had to be instantaneously and huge amounts of
Take a look
ice
at this,
or something.
Take a look at this account here. This is the Beckendorf mammoth, and this was in May 1846. A surveyor named Beckendorf and his party were camped in Siberia on the Indinkra River.
Okay.
And the spring thaw and the unusually heavy rains caused the swollen river to erode a new channel. And Beckendorf noticed a large object bobbing slowly in the water. As the black, horrible, giant-like mass was thrust out of the water, they beheld a colossal elephant's head, armed with mighty tusks, with its long trunk moving in an unearthly manner, as though seeking something lost therein. They tried to pull in the mammoth to shore with ropes and chains, but soon realized that its hind legs were anchored, actually frozen in the river bottom in a standing position.
Oh, man.
Then 24 hours later, the river thawed and eroded the river bottom, freeing the mammoth. The team of 50 men and their horses pulled the mammoth onto dry land, 12 feet from shore. The 13-foot tall, 15-foot-long beast was fat and perfectly preserved. Its widely opened eyes gave the animal appearance of life, as though it might move in a moment to destroy them with a roar. They removed the tusks and opened its full stomach, containing young shoots of the fir and pine, and a quantity of young fir cones, also in a chewed state. Hours later, and without warning, the river bank collapsed because the river had slowly undercut the bank. The mammoth was carried off toward the Arctic Ocean and never to be seen again.
That's, yeah. Well, go ahead.
There's another one.
Oh, go ahead. That was pretty interesting. So
There was the Berezovka mammoth, and this is the most famous one. And it's the most accessible and it's well studied. It's a 50-year-old male found in a freshly eroded bank 100 feet above Siberia's Berezovka River in 1900. Okay. A year later, an expedition led by Dr. Otto F. Hertz painstakingly excavated the frozen body and transported it to the Zoological Museum in St. Petersburg, Russia. And this was also upright mammoth, although its back was excessively humped and its straightened hind legs was rotated forward at the hips in almost a horizontal position. And this strange contorted position was further exaggerated by its raised and spread front legs. And several ribs of shoulder blade and pelvis were broken. Amazingly, the long bone in his right foreleg was crushed in about a dozen pieces, without noticeably damaging the surrounding tissue.
Well, that's really something.
And it had shaggy wire-like hair, and some of it was about 20 inches long. It was quite intact.
The hair, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the thing, I guess. So are we saying there were huge, like, ice dumps that must have happened quickly post-flood, at some time during the post-flood, during this 400-year period?
Well, what are you talking about, ice dumps?
Well, that's what I'm asking. I mean, to be frozen that quickly, or did the river suddenly freeze? I mean, what I'm getting at is that, Doug, that we find these mammoths. Mm-hmm. The range goes all the way from Siberia down to Central America. We understand. I mean, I've read that, but mainly that we're familiar with them in the Russian, Siberian,
right.
Our Siberian tundras and and Tiberian sundras. Huh? Anyway, but the point is, what I'm saying is that there were these thousands or hundreds of thousands of these elephants and other creatures up here in this area, and you know, I'm growing up with these pictures of these woolly mammoths over this frozen wastelands. But you know, what would they eat?
Yeah, here's the problem
you know,
with that. There's a major problem with this idea of these woolly mammoths, is that if they're related to the elephants cannot survive, you know, in a Arctic environment.
Well,
it just really wouldn't have worked at all.
No, and I mean, that's what I'm saying. How much vegetation did these creatures have to eat? Well, look what, and of course, what was in these mammoths' stomachs were these ferns.
It was tropical stuff.
Yeah, and so there had to be, Doug, it wasn't frozen all the time. It had to be a quick freeze in certain of these situations where these creatures could have been frozen. Now, you know, because the flood was not the one that would have done it, the flood was warm water,
Right.
there had to be some mechanism to cause cold, freezing temperatures very quickly.
Probably a massive shift of some sort
exactly
in the weather pattern after the flood, after things started to go more towards equilibrium.
Now, grant you that some of the stuff we fully really realize is speculative in nature, but is the uniformitarian position any less speculative?
No.
And they have less empirical data than we do. We know what would happen when light has a reflective. So we know that you know, and you can extrapolate realistically and say we would end up with some cold areas.
And this would follow the pattern of weather that we know here. But if you take a millions of years of scenario, we would have a problem with it because
big problem.
Because
or even
the current
thousands.
Or to try to do a uniformitarian idea, trying to take a look at our present. To explain what happened in the past, because our Arctic area, you do not get the type of weather pattern to sustain continental glaciation.
No. So, and what do you mean by that, continental glaciation?
That's where the ice covers the continental areas.
Right.
To the extent even down into Michigan and down into Indiana and
I think area. Yeah, the ice age went all the way down into the lower part of Indiana, didn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
So
it was a major event, but it was something that really. I also wanted to credit where I got this from. I was cruising the internet.
Cruising the internet, okay.
Now, this is a plug for our internet web page.
Oh, what a lead-in. Nice segue.
But it was interesting. I was on the internet the other day, and I logged into somebody's web page out in Spokane, Washington, and they already tied our internet web page into that. So that was kind of neat. But this is from Dr. Walter Brown's web page, and he's in a book called In the Beginning, and it's talking about all the evidences for a creationist worldview, and it's really great. But he's got about 48 pages on the frozen mammoths alone.
Does he really? Ooh, that would be interesting to go with.
And I was only able to print off just a little bit of it, but he goes into evidences that the mammoths themselves could not have survived in a frozen tundra type of environment. It just wouldn't have worked. And you know, they were talking about all the fat that was on the mammoths being the protective coating that they needed to shield themselves away from that ice age era.
But the elephants down in Africa have the same kind of stuff, don't they? Maybe
right,
not much,
and you have to explain how they got the fat. They got the fat from the tropical vegetation that they were eating.
So that's the thing I always thought. You know, you never think about that. How much food does an elephant have to eat a day?
Right.
And if it's nothing but frozen wasteland,
that's
you know, happening over thousands of. Why wouldn't they just migrate it, or south to get some more food? Why would they stay up there, especially if there's nothing to eat? They're not going to live on snow.
What else was interesting was that they were drilling up at the Prudhoe Bay area in northern Alaska for drilling for oil. Okay. Now the question, of course, is where does the oil come from? You get it from tropical vegetation, of course.
Isn't that an amazing thing?
But what they found as they were drilling down through that through the ice, they hit an area where they were getting actually frozen wood in areas from a tropical forest. So they
Ooh.
had entire tropical forest area that they're digging up while they're searching for oil.
So well, that verifies what we're saying. So what we're saying, Doug, is that the flood happened, wiped out the world. The oceans were warm, causing probably the areas around the ocean, the coastal regions to be really semi warm in nature. But over time, something began to happen, and fairly quickly, as far as geologic time is concerned, where the warm oceans, the cold land mass, because there was very little vegetation at the time. But this is the thing what gets me, Doug, as the vegetation began to grow and stuff. There must have been some kind of a shift in temperature that caused it to happen very quickly to bury it down there.
We really don't know what that was.
Yeah, that's
and the Bible doesn't give a whole lot of hints on that whole subject. But what we do know is that like the glaciation that we see today, like what's found at Glacier National Park,
right,
was a whole lot different than the continental glaciation, which caused the Great Lakes to be carved out, drumlins to be carved out, which are pear-shaped hills. All these things are a whole lot different than what we see today. And we can't rely upon a uniformitarian or uninformitarian type of philosophy to explain how the continental glaciers came about. They had to have come about by something like the Great Flood as a result of the post-flood effects. And I think we're about running out of time, aren't we?
At the end of the show, but it's been pretty fascinating. We've just barely touched on some of this stuff, and but the mammoths have always fascinated me, Doug, since I've been a little kid, reading about the mammoths being discovered.
Guess words. Is it science or is it storytelling? When you are reading National Geographic or your science textbook, get a red marker and underline words like probably, maybe, could have, perhaps. And when you get done, your book will look like it has the measles. Origin stories are full of this. They are not subject to rigorous scientific double-blind tests. Also look for words that are misleading and confusing, such as adaptation. This word merely refers to a condition that exists in the present, without an explanation about how it came to be this way. Look for advanced or primitive or complex. Organisms are advanced or primitive only in the mind of the evolutionist. All organisms, even the lowly bacteria, are complex. Look for advantage. Evolutionists say that if an organism exists, it has an advantage over creatures that preceded it. That is begging the question. Look for the word developed. If you see this word, substitute it with created by God. Look for the word dating or radioisotope dating. This is used by evolutionists to convey the misconception that there is a precise measurement of the characteristics of a rock to yield an accurate date. Watch out for these types of words that you have in your science textbooks. They indicate that they really aren't scientific.